Welcome everyone to another episode. Today I'm joined by Jasper Ettema from Jet Growth. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really delighted to be on the show.
Yeah, it's really good to have you. I think we can start with, can you tell me about Jet Growth and what you do?
Well, it's actually, I can make this a very long story or a very short story. The long story is basically I've been working as a startup founder, as an entrepreneur for like the last 15 years, on and off again, sometimes in the field of research with academics, sometimes as a founder with my own ideas. And then I got the opportunity to design an accelerator with an attached investment vehicle. And when that job was finished, I started to think about, okay, what is it that I can contribute to the ecosystem? And I thought like a consulting service for accelerators and incubators and VC funds was missing. So that was what I set up within Jet Growth, supporting accelerators and incubators with their strategies and also with their program execution. So happily enough, I get to work with a lot of founders. So accelerators and incubators contract me to basically design workshops, hold workshops with their founders, support their founders in mentoring sessions. I'm really grateful that I am able to do such great work.
Yeah, I get that. So you're essentially a startup program consulting business. Can you? Oh.
Yeah.
And what do you think what is the most common thing that people want help with from you?
Well, usually they're asking help for some execution of parts of the program. And in most occasions, we end up discussing their strategies. And that's where then the real consulting comes in, where we align their goals with actually their actions, which are seldomly in line. So I will have some examples of this later on, maybe.
Yeah, that would be great. What kind of things are they like missing in terms of their strategies and their goals and what they are implementing?
Well, you have two sorts of startup support programs, right? You have your accelerators and incubators, but the sorts are basically either they're publicly funded by private investors or by public money, right? Or they are corporate, right? And mostly when it comes to corporate accelerators or incubators, they tend to just want to do something with startups, and that's not the right approach. Because if you want to work with startups, you have to know why, right? Why do you want to work with startups? So that's the first thing we try to find out in consultancy is, why do you actually want to work with startups? What kind of startups are you looking for? Why? What do you expect them to deliver to your business?
Right? Yeah. And where do you identify the lacking in that sense? Like, what are people not getting in terms of that?
Well, in many occasions, let's keep it diplomatic. In many occasions, a CEO of a company or a board of a company just says, "Hey, we have to do something with startups. You, staff person, please design something that we can do with startups tomorrow." Right? So then one person gets assigned to the task. This person has to do something with startups that is fancy and marketable and maybe has an innovative touch, but it has actually no contribution to the core business of the corporate and has no value to the startup as such. So that's basically the main topic that I'm facing in my daily consultancy.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. So people are a bit, I don't know, like they get carried away just because it has to do with startups, but then it doesn't really boil down to something concrete.
Yeah, exactly. And as everything in a business, it needs a proper strategy as a basis, like as a fundamental. So if you don't know what you're aiming for, why shoot in the first place?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So define what you're aiming for, and then have a shootout, and a lot of corporates just stop their startup activities after their first tries because they find out it needs a lot more budget than they actually thought of, right? Because the activities just gets more and more, and they didn't expect that. They just thought, like, if we have one person doing something with startups, right, that will be enough.
Okay, yeah,
but it isn't.
No, exactly. But other than that, what would you say is common mistakes that people are doing that run programs?
Well, first of all, I must really emphasize that there are a lot of great programs out there, and this has improved quite a lot over the last 5 years, I would say. A lot of corporates have really good support for startups. A lot of them really know what to expect from a startup and what not. So that actually is turning in a really good direction. One thing that would be missing is a collaboration between accelerators and incubators. So what I often get hired for, and I'm talking against my own business now, is to give insights on what common practice is. Because accelerators think they're competing with other accelerators, but mostly an accelerator and incubator has a very local effect in a local ecosystem. So, for example, a startup accelerator in Germany must not directly compete with a startup accelerator in Sweden, and therefore they could actually exchange experience and knowledge, which they don't.
Okay, so a lot of like good collaboration is missing because people think that they are competing with each other.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, we're just all in the same boat.
Oh, okay, that's very interesting. Can you share some advice on, you mentioned it a bit before that you are working with this, but how programs can find the right startups?
Yeah. One of the things that I'm really often facing is corporate targets. Like, we're doing something with startups. We have an accelerator set up. Now we're trying to attract startups to this program, and we're trying to set a number that is very good. That shows that we are a good accelerator. That we are really a well-known or widespread accelerator that shows our quality. So somewhere around 1,000 startups that apply would show that my accelerator must be good, because else not so many would actually apply. Which is actually nonsense, because what you need as a corporate is the 5 or 10 right startups for your business. So actually, you didn't have to find out, what do I have to do to find exactly the amount of right startups that I would need for the program? And that's often not 1,000, it's often just a handful.
Okay, so the amount doesn't equal a good program.
No, exactly. The amount of applications just causes a lot of effort in selection. And I can tell you, if you have a good selection process, you can actually kick out like 60 to 70 to 80% more often if you have really well selection criteria defined.
Okay. And when it comes to finding the right the mentors for the program, do you have any insights to share on that?
Yeah. So there are a lot of good mentors out there, and a lot of good mentors that have their own entrepreneurship experience. And this is what I would actually be looking for if I set up an accelerator program. I would be looking for entrepreneurial minds. So one of the things that you want to prevent from happening is having corporate strategies implemented on a startup, because that will kill them, because they don't have the resources to actually execute on these strategies. So you need people, mentors, that actually understand the limitations and the chances or strength the startups have, and coach them in exactly that way, or mentor them in exactly that way. And usually people with only corporate experience are not able to do that. So I would be looking for people with their own entrepreneurial experience at least.
That makes a lot of sense. You would think that that would be a good person to turn to, the one with corporate experience, but when you explain it like that, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, there is an exception actually, because what you also want to have, especially when a corporate accelerator, corporate incubator, is that of course the startups align to the strategy of the corporate, and actually the startup and the corporate work together. So having someone from inside the company, from inside the corporate, actually guiding the startup on a technical level would actually totally make sense. Yeah. But on the business level, it might not so much make sense.
Okay. And in terms of duration, what do you usually give for advice when the people who are running the programs are trying to decide to go for a longer term program, or what kind of insights do you have on that?
Well, there's actually not a really general advice. It totally depends on what you're trying to achieve. The only general advice that I can give here is that 6 months are basically a startup year. So having a 6-month program is basically quite long. Then again, if you're trying to develop something technical, it might need that long. And even if you're thinking about deep tech, right, it might just need that long to develop the next result or achieve the next milestone. But you could also think of accelerators and incubators that only last for a couple of weeks, or even are a really quick push through on one single topic. For example, only sales, or only performance marketing, or only growth hacking, right? Then you could develop actually a program that only lasts for a couple of days, which also would be very valuable.
Okay, so time doesn't necessarily reflect the quality. So
no, not at all.
Oh, I think that might be a quite common misconception, that the longer the program is, that the better quality it would be. Would you say that that is the same thing? Have you seen that when you're working?
No, the only thing that I could say is, okay, the longer the program gets, the more time you should actually calculate or maybe plan for the startup to take care of its own business. You know, you cannot tie a startup into your accelerator 24/7 over a couple of weeks. That's just not possible, right? So the longer the program is, the less full time you can expect the startup to join your program.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when it comes to funding, that is usually the thing that people are struggling with the most. Have you got any good advice on how to secure funding?
Yeah, we see a trend going this way, especially when innovation service providers set up programs for a group of corporates. Then, of course, the corporates pay for the service and they pay into the incubator or accelerator. But that's a very, very common scheme that you see in Europe quite often now, where corporates just pay in a ticket for one startup, or a certain amount for 2 or 3 batches of startups, right? In cooperation with other corporates, maybe in the same technical field or something like this, right? But other than that, of course, something that I really, really am a fan of is trying to co-finance startup support activities with European funds. So funding by the European Commission, by the European Parliament is not really seldom. It is not easy to achieve, but it can be done. I'm working with a partner from Slovenia to achieve these fundings. They are experts in the field. And we have seen some successes that actually allowed accelerators and incubators to double their activities just because of the co-funding from the European Union.
But when it comes to to this particular thing, would you say that it's a common mistake to not go that route?
No, it's not suited for every topic or every region or every accelerator, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on the situation. It depends on who you are, what you're trying to achieve. Deep tech, research-based accelerators and incubators have better chances, right? So it really depends on what you're doing. But given the situation, there are good chances to get some funding.
Okay. And when it comes to different trends among startups, how do you think that programs should approach it? Should they shy away from trends or should they follow the trends? What are your opinions?
Yeah, the problem is with this that the trends are basically a very inflationary, is an inflationary word. So oftentimes what people call a trend is not a trend, it's just a hype. Okay, so for example, basing an incubator program on ChatGPT would be basing your program on a hype. Whereas if you would base this on artificial intelligence and language processing, that would actually be basing it on a trend, right? So I think you should gain a large understanding, a common understanding of what global trends are, and then try to focus on these trends, real trends, to base your program on. And that's actually done very well. A very good example of this is, for example, Startup Bootcamp in Amsterdam. They have launched their Bold Action, where they have financed supporting 90 startups in 9 batches over, I think it's 2.5 or 3 years. And they are all related to one of the topics of global trends, like sustainability, mobility, green energy, all these topics, right?
And that is very interesting because, like, sustainability, you can't view that as a hype because it will. So that kind of example makes it so clear that what could be a trend and what is a hype.
A good example of this where it went wrong was actually incubators and accelerators basing on chatbots. In the past, it was like 4 or 5 years ago, where some of those incubators and accelerators actually popped up. And then after 1.5 years, they vanished again because the chatbot topic was basically done, right? So it's interesting to see.
Yeah. And I think the best advice is, as you said, to learn how to differentiate between what's a trend and what's a hype.
Yeah, exactly.
But is there anything more that you would like to share on a more maybe general level about what advice that you have for people who are in the early stages or maybe just in the idea stage of starting a program?
Yeah, don't hesitate to go to other program managers. Visit other programs. Even if you don't do it locally, then visit other cities in Europe or maybe even across the Atlantic, or Hong Kong, for example, has great programs, right? Australia, Sydney has great programs, Brisbane, yeah. But don't be shy to contact these people and say, hey, can I visit you? Can we have a word about it? Because these people know that you're not competition. You're in a totally different corner of the world, right? So that's number one, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a really great advice and something that people need to hear. Yeah, it has been such a pleasure talking to you today. Do you feel like there is anything more that you would like to add to the conversation?
Well, I think it's just so great to see so many people working on supporting founders and entrepreneurs throughout the world. And I'm actually really grateful to be able to contribute a little bit of what I've experienced and pass it on. And I hope I can do this for a very, very long time ongoing.
Yeah, definitely. I get that, and I believe so. I have to thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.